given current administration being, all about Bitcoin to some extent, if you ignore all the scams. But, if very high level, they're favorable to Bitcoin versus previous US administrations. But that's probably, a friend you don't want, because literally the phrase in the election was, all the Bitcoin will be mined in America or made in America or something. I don't remember the exact word, but the problem is regulatory capture of US mining infrastructure, and that would only get worse. And it's being celebrated pretty much universally as a good thing. And all it does is lead to centralization of Bitcoin mining. And that just wouldn't be a good thing at all. And I can even see an environment where, um, OFAC or some similar thing gets pushed on top of a pool like Foundry, who already can pull off a 51% attack. And rather than people say that's not within the Bitcoin ethos or anything like that, they'll probably get called un-American at this point. And it will, I think like the pushback against any sort of attempt to maintain, Bitcoin as neutral money, that can get caught up in a political battle. And then you have the whole strategic Bitcoin reserve as well, which also worries me, because Bitcoin is, every 4 years you'll have part of the election. Are the government going to sell loads of it? Are they going to sell the whole reserve? Like every time there's one centralized entity with a load of Bitcoin, that you just get this perennial FUD, which is they're about to sell it. And it was the Mt. Gox coins for the last like 12 years. Any minute now, they're going to sell it, and then the price will tank. And, and just having the US government have 1 million Bitcoins while we're in election season, with the Democrats maybe coming in who said they're going to sell it all. I don't want them to be in that kind of position to screw with the market. It's just it's a short-term gain where the price might fly up, but long-term, we want Americans owning Bitcoins. We don't want the American government owning loads of Bitcoin. That doesn't translate to helping Bitcoin at all. I'll stop rambling. Do you have anything on that, Luke?
Not particularly.
Do you want to see SBR or not?
I think the government can only have what it needs to survive and to provide the services it's supposed to provide, and it shouldn't be run like a business and trying to make long-term profits that it just holds.
Interesting.
Like if the government doesn't have a use for the money, they should just be refunding it to the taxpayers, and then the taxpayers can buy Bitcoins with it.
That would be nice.
That would be too easy, having a government that makes any semblance of sense.
Yeah, well, I'd rather they have sense than sats.
Nice.
Yeah, so there's that. I think it's just Bitcoin is anti-fragile, and everyone is used to fiat land where everything is centralized and fragile. So all the things that look good for anything are bad for Bitcoin, and vice versa. Like Bitcoin thrives in adversarial environments. The more help governments give it, the weaker it gets, and the more they attack it, the stronger it gets. And
Definitely disagree with that one.
yeah, I know you do. So let's hash it out. Why do you think I'm wrong on that?
With Bitcoin as a currency, it needs to be something used openly, and that's not something that can happen if it's being attacked by governments.
Okay, I agree with that, but I've always said there's two ends of the spectrum that are the same. There's Ron Paul, leave it alone, get rid of capital gains tax, let people do whatever they want. I don't dispute that that's great. But when people talk about favorable political landscapes for Bitcoin, that's never what they're talking about. They're always talking about just, regulatory capture, and regulatory clarity is a phrase that gets thrown around a lot. And all that does is create, as I said, a regulatory moat where everyone has to basically squeeze themselves through this centralized funnel to be allowed to interact with Bitcoin. And, like the tax thing, if you can, having regulatory clarity in Canada that says you pay 50% less tax if you lease your hash rate rather than be a solo miner, that some people are like, yeah, like I see people from the publicly traded mining companies that fight for stuff like that, get it, write a Twitter post saying, we're making progress in DC, and they'll have like thousands of likes and people being like, yeah, we're making progress. And I'm like, but that just made everything worse. That if they leave it alone, sure. But to end my point, if you go to the other end where they attack it so over the top that you develop an underground economy where everyone uses it permissionlessly again, because that's the only way they can use it. That's just as good as leaving it alone, even though it's a lot more scary. Everything in between, though, for me, just seems to weaken it.
Nah, underground markets are always going to be much worse than open markets above ground. I mean, you can have regulatory clarity is probably the wrong word, because you can have terrible regulations that are clear. But I think most people who are talking about wanting regulatory clarity are hoping for regulations that are very good, like explicitly no capital gains tax. That would be clarity, and very good clarity.
Yeah, I'm fine with the government saying they won't do stuff like charge you capital gains, all about that. But I'm not fine with them ever doing things that taking active measures to support Bitcoin. You know, the whole I'm from the government and I'm here to help thing. Like, there's just nothing scarier than that, right?
So you don't
So
think there should be like a Bitcoin mining tax credit, like the EV tax credit?
exactly. That's the thing that kills me. Where if you can qualify for some sort of green energy initiative, I'm not really worried about that under Trump because he's not a climate communist, but like that there has been movement towards that before. That's what Saylor's Mining Council was when Elon got really upset about Bitcoin being bad for the environment. Saylor very quickly moved to put together what would always begin as a voluntary initiative for miners to say, look how green we are. And you don't want to pander to these people at all. Like,
Well, I mean, they could very well just go the opposite direction and just subsidize mining in general, like even if regardless of greenness.
Even that, though, has the problem that it makes it some more mining will happen in the U.S. and not outside the U.S., which can be just as much a problem as a single entity having too much hash rate as a single country having too much hash rate.
They could start mining in D.C., like at the White House. Maybe they set up miners. Who knows?
you ever think
Yeah,
this?
I would usually say, like, you don't want a single entity with over like maybe 20% hash rate on the far high extreme, but you don't want a single country with over 30% of hash rate, I think.
Do you think at this point my main concern is how much Bitcoin does China own? Does anyone actually know that?
I don't think there's a way to know, and I think that's part of the beauty of it.
Well, if they declared that they owned a lot, maybe we could take them at their word. But Bitmain is the main manufacturer of ASICs, and they're presumably all backdoored. So it's not out of the question that China can watch America stockpile lots and lots of Bitcoin, have all the mining done there, and then go yoink to the entire network because all of the hardware is under their control. So I mean, if they owned a lot of Bitcoin, I wouldn't be so worried about that. But if they're trying to Trojan horse it, like, hey, we'll get this whole network that runs on our hardware, that's all closed source and unverifiable.
Why
Like,
doesn't the Taco Girl solution work for China? Why can't they do both? They can have their backdoor and a ton of Bitcoin.
what's the taco girl you said?
Taco Girl, you know the Taco Girl meme?
No, I'm
Why
from
why
Europe.
not
We don't
both?
have tacos. Oh, why not both? Okay, right.
What's that have to do with tacos?
I don't know. She's called Taco Girl. But yeah, I mean, what's the problem with them? Like, what's to stop them from having both scenarios covered?
Well, you'd take some comfort from the fact that they own a lot of Bitcoin, so they don't undermine confidence in the whole network. If they don't, it would necessarily be a little suspicious if China was making all of the hardware and didn't own any of the currency itself. Why would they bless it like that? I don't credit politicians with having that kind of time frame. Like, hey, we'll make you dependent on Bitcoin, and then in 15 years we'll destroy your economy once you buy 1 million of it. Like, but
I
it's
don't know.
Keep
possible.
in mind, this is communist China. Like, destroying the economy of non-communists is kind of not new to them.
Yeah, it wouldn't
It's
surprise me. Like, if it has no value to them and they just want to destroy it, it doesn't matter if they own half of it. It's dead at that point.
I mean, this is where my stomach drops out from, down to the floor. Every time I think about Ocean and decentralizing template construction and, trying to do what we're doing with moving people over to knots from core for reasons we've spoken about a lot. The software it's what Billy Bum-Soo Kim said, right? When he came to the Ocean launch and was saying, if you want good software, start with the hardware. And it's like
Sure.
Bitcoin mining hardware sucks. and like it is responsible for so much of what makes Bitcoin secure, and it's so bad, and there's just so little that can be done about it that it drives me to distraction. And I'm like, until you get those Arizona chip fabrication places going, and you get like some American competition like Dorsey with Block and all that, like I don't feel comfortable while 90% of the hardware is all Bitmain. And I think
Well,
until you fix that, everything else is like, like repainting, touch-ups of paint when you've got your engine block missing.
Bitmain pulling the plug, it would be the least evil thing they could do with the backdoor, though. I mean, if in that case, we're just reduced in hash rate and the difficulty adjusts, and we'll be fine in the end.
Y-
The
That is,
bigger risk would be if they took over the full nodes making blocks and
uh-huh.
controlled the hash rate remotely. That's a much bigger risk.
I feel like
So
they couldn't
where's
control it remotely. I mean, there's the software at least has been examined a little bit by outsiders. So I don't know if like the software side can have too much going on there. Probably has something, but who knows? On the hardware
Yeah.
side, I think the most they could do is time bomb it or do some or give it some kind of trigger to do or stop doing something. And like for all we know, I mean, it could be set up so that when it sees a hash with a some kind of certain value or some end time or whatever, it just no longer gives us block shares. Or it could be like weaning us off of block winning shares over time. We don't know.
I'm sure I'm sure it's entirely possible for the firmware to just overheat the chips and fry them.
Oh well, yeah. I mean, that's I don't know. I don't know. I feel like somebody would have noticed that by now, but who knows? I mean, if you're running the Antminer stock firmware, I mean, I guess that's what you get. But on the hardware side, like when you replace the control board and whatnot, there's limits to what could possibly happen there. And like one of those things would be a time bomb. Like it knows the current time because it's in the block header. So it could say like after 2026, all these will only give half of the block winning shares out as results or something like that. And we'd have no way to really know if that's the case or not because that's baked into the hardware and nobody's really doing that kind of analysis on the hardware.
Got an X-ray for chips.
Well, even if you get the like a solid scan of the hardware, I mean, reverse engineering it to the point where you understand something like that is years of work. And
you
I
got to do it
doubt
for every
anybody's putting
model?
that in. Yeah.
Just detect things like that.
I mean, if yeah,
reverse engineering it fully would take years, but just detecting something out of a miss, I would think would be much simpler.
I mean, you'd have to understand the overall design to begin with in order to even place something that even to recognize something that out of place, because there's reasons to have different logic in there that may be benign, and if you don't actually reverse engineer like what that particular block of ASIC does, then you might not understand its purpose, and it may be fine. It's you'd have to reverse engineer a good chunk of it to really understand any kind of backdoor.
I have like a defining moment in my life. There's before I knew about Stuxnet and after I knew about Stuxnet. that changed everything for me. Like the sophistication of that just made me never ever trust anything that uses ones and zeros again. So
Well, I mean, that's everything now.
right. So I mean, but I can't afford to like Bitcoin seems to carry on working somehow. Like this is always me on Bitcoin. I'm like, look, man, it's really broken, but good luck finding anything else half as good. That's always my thing with Bitcoin. It's never like, it's just immune. Like it's completely immune to all sorts of. Thanks to game theory, Bitcoin is indestructible.
I think we just do what we can, and like
Yeah.
one of the things that we're doing now is we're trying to decentralize template construction. I think that's a worthy goal. That's not the entire puzzle. It's one step in the journey of making Bitcoin as good as it could possibly be, but it's a necessary one. We have to do it. It has to be done. And the more people that are making their own blocks, whether they're mining with us with Datum, whether they're solo mining with Lotto mining, it doesn't matter. That's better than everybody on Foundry or everybody on Antpool or whatever the case may be. And just getting away from that is a win. The fact that we're growing and being able to do a lot of that, and and getting that word out there, and people are receptive to it. I think we are accomplishing that goal, even if it's slower than we would like it to be.
If this becomes a regular thing, whatever this is, like Monday morning coffee with the ocean guys or whatever, I just want everyone to know Jason is usually the resident pessimist, so we're not going to carry on like that, right? Usually, I'm very surprised to see Jason being the glass half full guy here. So it's a new side of you that I've never seen before.
What?
So, yeah, I appreciate it.
I'm cautiously pessimistic.
Meanwhile, you're boiling the glass.
So there's also been the Roger Ver thing, which would be nice to touch on, because he released this very emotive video saying, I'm being persecuted for my beliefs and they're being mean to me just like they were mean to you, Trump, and all that. And I guess I have a little original take on it, which is I think there's kind of like a poetic justice around how these things work. And Roger Ver is someone that did like every single unethical thing a human being can do and got away with all of it. Then he doesn't pay the exit tax, which is the one thing I would defend him for. And that's the thing that they're trying to take him down for. So I just think in his head, he's gotten away with all this stuff forever. And then the one thing where he feels actually, he doesn't feel like he morally compromised by doing something like that. That's the one that he gets in trouble for. To me, that if I was in his position, that would drive me insane. So I figure that's what the moral arc of the whole story is. And he's not fighting the extradition on the grounds of the exit tax is immoral, which it is. He's just saying, oh, it's a conspiracy because I'm against Bitcoin BTC and I have the real Bitcoin BCH. And it's a dark web of people trying to punish me for that. And there's some small chance that's true, but it doesn't actually mean BCH is any good. But I've watched the sort of out of the box thinkers all over the place, all the way up to Malcolm Tucker buy that narrative. Sorry, not Malcolm Tucker, Tucker Carlson. I've seen them all say, hey, there's this guy who's being, they're trying to arrest him and throw him in jail. And he's telling us Bitcoin has been completely captured. So many people are buying that narrative. It's really annoying because every Bitcoiner I know thinks it's really unjust that Roger would be chased after from a country that he renounced citizenship for, that wanted whatever. What do you know? What percentage of his money they wanted for him leaving America? Do you know what that is?
I think it's like 30%. It's basically as if you sold all your assets, what the capital gains would be.
Yes. So I don't know any Bitcoiner that thinks that's okay. I have seen some people that I've never heard of in the space that are like, that really don't like him and are happy he's suffering. But I don't know anyone with an ethical bone in their body that thinks it's reasonable for someone that renounces the US citizenship to have to pay 30% of their net worth to America. And they're doing it even more ridiculously, which is they want 30% of what his Bitcoins are worth today, right? Like instead of what it was when he left the country. That's ridiculous. Like they're just basically saying we want billions of dollars. It was like the Alex Jones trial where they're like, you owe $800 trillion or something. It's like, what are you talking about? Like this is just kangaroo court nonsense.
Yeah, if it were up to me, I would say he should be the court should just dismiss it, saying exit tax is illegal and unconstitutional, and then they throw him in jail for fraud. He's done plenty of that.
Yeah, I mean, he had a bunch of fireworks in his house, and he was like,
already served time for that. But I'm thinking, like, trying to pass off BCH as Bitcoin, that's totally fraud.
Yeah, he owned Bitcoin.com, and he told people, if you want to buy Bitcoin, there. And if you want to buy this other thing, he called it Bitcoin Core, which is ridiculous. It's the name of an implementation. It's not what that even means. And, he definitely successfully tricked people into buying what they thought was Bitcoin and wasn't. And that's fraudulent, and that's completely unethical, all while complaining about being censored, but while squatting the domain @Bitcoin on Twitter and Reddit/BTC and Bitcoin.com. Like, this is amazingly valuable real estate. He had all that, and he would still complain about posts, brigading and astroturfing around big blocks on Reddit/Bitcoin and BitcoinTalk.org. Just those two communities blocking him and preventing him from spamming endlessly about big blocks. That was enough for him to say the US government is trying to stop Bitcoin from being adopted as a medium of exchange, when he himself said, if making blocks bigger opens us up to the risk of becoming PayPal 2.0, I think that's a worthwhile risk. And it isn't. That was never a reasonable position to have because there's already PayPal. So, yeah. I don't think anything Roger says is true. I think he's a dishonest and unethical person. But I still, it's like with the samurai people. I still believe that what they are in trouble with the authorities over is unjust, and they should be freed. But it doesn't justify the poor actions they've been doing forever. And I hate that the people that see everything through this lens of, these heuristics that lead you to go, well, if my enemy's enemy is my friend, right? So if Roger is the enemy of some very unethical, legislation, then it leads you to think the guy must be right about something. And I don't think he is.
Yeah, definitely not.
I'm glad you agree on the tax being unethical. When I left the UK, there was no exit tax, and that surprises me because they're bad. But Canada and America both have exit taxes, which is just awful.
Yeah, people don't like, but people will see me sometimes argue that taxes are not theft, but that's reasonable taxes, legitimate taxes, not this crazy exit tax, not 30% capital gains. Like less than 1% of income might make sense, but
well, try leaving a state like California or New Jersey and go to another country, then you're paying federal and state exit taxes.
Oh, they charge state exit taxes too?
Yep.
Can you leave and go to California?
Nope.
Oh, sorry, leave California and go to another state before you exit?
Nope.
Dude, you're in a prison in a prison.
So, like, if somebody's in New Jersey, for example, they have to pay an exit tax to move to another state.
Pretty sure that's unconstitutional.
Yeah, I thought so too, but it's a thing.
Of course, so was the national exit tax. So I guess that's not really saying much. Doesn't stop them from just ignoring it.
This is why I hodl, because one day, if I hodl long enough, no one else will feel like they're entitled to the fruits of those labors.
Well, that's why they want to have unrealized gains tax now, right?
Yeah,
they want to take it while they still can.
That's literally just get in the gulag and dig the ditch in which we will, stand at the end of it, and I'm going to fire a round into your forehead, and you fall in there, and then we bury you. That's
we got to figure out how to cover this $2 trillion deficit somehow.
Or we just forget about it and say we're not paying it.
Then that's the end of the US dollar.
That's okay.
That'd be fine.
Yep, I'm fine with that.
That's why we're working on Bitcoin, right? We're trying to get ready for that. It's inevitable at this point.
I mean, I don't see a way out of it. Like recovering from where we are on the US dollar side seems impossible. Maybe I'm wrong, but
I think it was possibly for COVID, but once they started that money printer going that fast, there's no way. It's a lost cause at this point.
I think if we had done like an about face like in 2019 and really actually hunkered down and started trying to fix stuff, maybe it would have happened. Now I just don't see. I just don't see how the numbers work. There's just no way.
Yeah,
the wheel has come off.
Yeah, pretty much. We have passed the point of no return. That was 5 years ago.
Yeah, it's over. it's definitely over. But I don't really understand. Like, I don't know. Maybe you subscribe to the whole fourth turning. That whole school of thought.
Don't know.
No, it's decided that you have have you heard of it, Luke?
No. I was just gonna say it's interesting because up before COVID, I probably still considered Bitcoin somewhat of an experiment, and it's just because of COVID completely destroying the dollar. There's no way out at this point. We have to make Bitcoin succeed.
We do.
Let's do it.
I think that's the realization that the spammers and the scammers haven't come to yet. That's why they think it's okay to just jeopardize Bitcoin for all their nonsense.
Some people just want to watch the world burn.
Some people.
Scammers.
It is interesting that a lot of the people involved in some of the scam coin stuff just really don't know. Like they really don't understand what they're doing to Bitcoin and to harm the network. Like we've talked to a few of them. Like the people in this room have talked to a few of them, and like they're doing it because it can be done, and not understanding the implications of what that's doing to the ecosystem as a whole, and trying to make money off of it, scamming other people, and that's all that they care about right now. So, I mean, on one perspective, I mean, they're getting Bitcoin. That's one way they're working on getting Bitcoin. Because what's the saying? That's why do you make a scam coin? To get more Bitcoin.
Yeah, but what good is that once you destroy Bitcoin?
Right.
And there's nothing to exit to. There's no dollar anymore.
It's not a very joined up thinking, is it?
The yen isn't doing any better than the dollar. I doubt Chinese money is doing any better.
Look, the scammers that's doing it, it's not going to be them that breaks it. It'll be some guy way down the road that does it. They're going to have their fun now.
You have to have faith in the future in order to build an 800-year construction, cathedral or something like. And if you're a nihilist and you just want to burn everything down because you don't believe there is going to be a tomorrow, then make what you can today and be hedonistic. Like it comes down to like fundamentally where your psychological anchor is. If you believe in a future, then you need Bitcoin to work, and you need to guide it in the right direction while it's still in this nascent form. But scammers and people that just want to have a lot of fun today and just be reckless with everything, they exist, and that is the dominant ideology or worldview that's been pushed on us for decades now. So people are a product of their time.
I mean, why care about tomorrow when I can make $1 today?
Yeah,
If you don't believe there is a tomorrow, then that actually is a reasonable question.
I don't know if it's not believing there is a tomorrow, but just not having the foresight to know what will happen tomorrow.
Not being invested in tomorrow, at least in some cases.
Sure. Yeah, I think a lot of these people just can't see 3 days down the road beyond what they're doing right now. It's more like, oh, there's a way for me to sell this JPEG and make $10,000 right now. Okay, but what's going to happen 10 years from now when everything collapses because of your dick butt pic on the blockchain?
Yeah, you more than doubled the size of the UTXO set. It sucks running a node now, and despite being in the sort of early to middle stages of a bull cycle, no one's using the blockchain. There's no transaction fees. It's utterly empty. Like pretty much every weekend we're down into the absolute dregs of what you might include in a block, and it's just op return junk for this runes scam. So looking at all of that, I'm just like, it shouldn't be like that. Like in 2017, we had more transactions going on in the blockchain than we do now. And I'm not going to say that's because Lightning worked so well. I don't think that's a safe assumption.
I think it's helped a little, though.
It definitely has. But there's no way of knowing. That's the mixed blessing of Lightning. We don't actually know how much activity is going on there.
Well, we know we're using it.
Well, yeah, sure.
Can't have all those channels open just for Ocean. It's got to be being used by other people for stuff.
Yeah, that's true. I gotta dip. I gotta go to the airport. See you guys later. I'll be in El Salvador if you need me.